What the hell was that monologue of Sam Rockwell's?
From creepy incestual undertones and salvation through murder, could there be a family more dysfunctional than the Ratliff?
Did Belinda sell her soul, or is she one step closer to fulfilling her dream?
Bad teeth, receding hairlines. Are we the most vain gingers on the internet?
Red and Red Real Reviews books a stay at the White Lotus for Season 3 on HBO Max.
Ahoy, ladies! I didn't see you there. Would you guys like to set sail on this ocean of flavor?
Randall, look at eye contact, please. You're gonna be cool, right?
Oh, baby, I'm as cool as the other side of the pillow.
Been staring at this board for days.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win. You die.
Act. Bears eat beets. My brain is on fire. I'm dying.
I am the one who knocks.
Bears. Beets. Battlestar Galactica.
When they say 2% milk, I don't know what the other 98% is.
It's hard to believe we're even the same species.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
Oh my god. The microchip has been compromised.
Dracarys.
And welcome back to another enchanting episode of Red and Red Real Reviews. So, this is a very buzzed about show, and this is the third season of White Lotus. We've had 2 seasons prior where everyone is just, it's the show that everyone's talking about. So, it's also an anthology series, which there aren't a lot of those these days, but each season is kind of different from the last, with only a couple of characters making a repeat appearance. So I prefaced it to you by saying, you don't have to watch the prior 2 seasons, but you can if you have time, or you can if you want to, but it's not necessary. But I'm glad you watched the prior 2, just so you have an idea of those repeat characters. But the question that everyone wants to know, how does this third season stack up to the first 2 seasons, and should everybody watch it?
I would say yes. I mean, to that particular question, I did not find season 2 particularly captivating, and maybe it's because I find Jennifer Coolidge extremely annoying. But I found this one better than season 2. I found it on par with season 1. Season 1, I felt like the story was good. There just wasn't a lot of action. There wasn't too much intrigue. But I thought that the acting and the character dynamicism was very well done.
Okay,
This season 3 though had a lot more action.
Yeah, so I know we kind of disagreed, because I would say season 2 was probably my favorite. Then I might go this season. Then I might go first season. I actually was having a hard time remembering the first season at all. I mean, I know it was only 3-4 years ago, but I was like, oh, wasn't that the one with Sydney Sweeney and Connie Britton and a few other people? And I had a hard time remembering what the plot was and what the whole just theme was. And then I think also that I sort of had allegiance to the second season because I've been to Italy. It took place in Italy. I related to that. So I think the setting kind of did it for me.
And likewise, I've been to Maui, and I went there right after I graduated high school, so I would have more connection to Maui and the scene set there in season 1.
Yeah, but it's still hard to compare these 3 seasons because yes, you have Mike White who's doing all of it, and he's very creative and he comes up with amazing things, but it's kind of like comparing apples and oranges, because you have these different settings, a whole different cast of characters for the most part. You have your who's who of celebrities. So, we'll get into that in a second. But yeah, it's so hard to compare because it's just a different animal each season.
Well, I'm glad that I did not take your advice as far as not watching the first 2, because the return characters have this continuous storyline throughout all 3 seasons. So if I had not watched season 1 and season 2, I would have had no idea what the Belinda and Gary/Greg story was. and that was a significant storyline in season 3. So, had I not had any prior knowledge, I'm like, what is this going on here? I'm so disconnected from this. I don't care about this. What is happening?
Yeah, so it's kind of a happy accident. I'm glad you had the time to watch those first two. So yeah, we'll get into the stars in a second, but I also thought for some reason the pacing in this one seemed a little bit different. I feel like they obviously introduced conflict in the first episode, but then the conflict was kind of asleep for a while. It was a slow burn that came, I think it was episode 5 or 6, where it started to pick up again. Like we had a handful of episodes that were just exposition and seeing what these characters were really like. So yeah, how did you think about the pacing?
I didn't feel it was really a slow burn at all. And on top of that, I thought that the pacing was pretty consistent to the other 2 seasons. In fact, I would almost argue that it was faster than both of the other 2 seasons. Like, I felt like Rick's kind of kooky, quest for vengeance of his father was pretty consistent throughout. It was kind of like a rat's maze of him finding all the pieces to get to that point. I mean, the girlfriends thing was kind of a, fluff distraction storyline a little bit. And the Ratliff family storyline was very, very consistent throughout. I mean, they're constantly going back and forth to Tim's internal struggle and the children's all individual dynamics. So, I mean, I didn't really find a lot of lulls in kind of pacing out each particular arc.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was ever dragging or boring for me, but it was, I seem to see online that people are like, when is something going to happen? People were kind of waiting for that. And I don't know if they were bored. I don't know if that's necessarily it, but it's just, we were all seeing this character development, meeting these characters and finding out about them, but also anticipating something to happen that just took a little bit to take off. And when it did, whew, it was powerful.
Well, I can say for one, I never listened to people's opinions on the internet much.
Yeah.
I consider us somewhat of an internet personality, so I feel like people should be listening to our opinions, not the other way around.
True. Where I would say we're pretty spot on with some things, but
yeah.
So yeah, per usual, we had a stacked cast with all sorts of bigger stars. We had some that were familiar faces. Maybe they're not household names. So as you put it, our ageless wonder, Michelle Monaghan, who's a return from Bad Monkey. We loved her in that. We love how she's aging gracefully. So the bigger names, I would say, Michelle Monaghan, Sam Rockwell, who had a very memorable monologue, of course. We had Leslie Bibb, who was actually married to Sam Rockwell in real life. And then we had Parker Posey, who I had to kind of fill you in on because she's sort of, I don't know if she's a little bit more of like an independent film star. Like, I don't know that she's been in very many blockbusters and huge movies, but she's had kind of bit parts and here, there, and everywhere for the past 20, 25 years.
It was funny because, like, I know her name, but, like, I couldn't pick out a movie she was in, and I'm going through her filmography, and the first one that stuck out to me was one of the, like, newer Superman films. And I'm like, and I don't remember, one, that film at all, or two, her from that film. So I'm like, this is like such a common name. Maybe it's just a unique name. It's a youthful name. So it's like something like, oh yeah, Parker Posey. Like, wait a minute. Who's Parker Posey?
Yeah. And she, what I remembered her from was ironically the Josie and the Pussycats movie. I think she played like a villain, and that was literally 24 years ago at this point, which is crazy. But
yikes.
That's what I remembered her from. And then, so we had some other familiar faces we probably wouldn't know the names otherwise. So, of course, I took them down. We had John Grise, who plays Gary. And there was a famous meme circulating in the past few weeks on Instagram stating that Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite is Gary. It's the same actor.
Way.
And yes.
I would not have known that.
And I looked at the meme and I said, oh, I'm like, they're right. I did not even realize it.
Lorica, that's awesome.
So good. And then we had, I don't know if you know her name. Maybe you've seen her in things. The only thing I've seen her in is The Gilded Age, which is another HBO show. Her name is Carrie Coon. She plays Lori. And she was also in The Sinner, which I did watch, but I don't really recognize her. And then The Leftovers, which I've never watched, but is a popular big show.
Oh, sorry. I'm thinking when you said that, I was thinking The Holdovers, the Oscar-nominated movie with Paul Giamatti.
No, Leftovers. Is it a comedy? I think it might be on HBO or Showtime.
Yeah. Okay.
Is it like
yeah,
Justin Theroux's show? Justin Theroux's show? That's a tongue twister.
The name rings a bell to me, but I can't remember if I ever started it or not in the past.
I don't think I did. It's a popular show. And then we also have who plays Tim Ratliff, Jason Isaacs, which most people would recognize him from. He's Lucius Malfoy from Harry Potter, Draco Malfoy's dad. He's also from that show, The OA, which was a great show that Netflix canceled far too soon, like 2 seasons in. And a bad Peter Pan remake from like 2004.
I didn't even think of Lucius Malfoy, and when you say Parker Posey was a villain in what you think of, I think of Jason Isaacs also as a villain in The Patriot with Mel Gibson.
Yes.
He was a very ruthless colonial colonel who had very questionable tactics of war, rules of war in that movie, and that's the first thing I always think of with Jason Isaacs.
He must be sort of typecast as I don't want to say bad guy or a villain, but sort of like a tough,
edgy?
Yeah, like a rough and tough guy. So, I mean, that's on par for him. And then I don't know if you would have recognized him, but Patrick Schwarzenegger plays Saxon.
I saw the name in the credits. I know you skip the intro every time, but I saw his name in the credits, and I'm wondering, like, I mean, Schwarzenegger is a pretty unique name. That's got to be a relation to Arnold.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know him from anything, so I would not have recognized him or picked him out as Saxon or anything.
Yeah, he's just kind of getting going. In the recent handful of years, his last or his most prominent role before this was in The Staircase. Mm-hmm. That was like a true crime, a drama about a case where he starred opposite Colin Firth, and that was 6 to 8 episodes, I believe. So that was his kind of second big role. This is really his most prominent role where he got to really flex his acting muscles, and he got to flex some nudity. Yeah. So
and the funny part is, like, as far as his lineage, he knowing that that's him, he does kind of look like a young Arnold from the bodybuilder days, minus the bodybuilder muscles.
He's sort of a hybrid between Arnold and his mom, Maria Shriver, for sure. Like he definitely he and his siblings look like Kennedys, I think.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So then I don't know if you would have known her from before, but the woman who plays Chelsea, her name is Amy Lou Wood, and she's from a show called Sex Education on Netflix that I've seen. I'm not sure what else she's been in besides that, but she's British, obviously. Like, that's her real accent in the show. So,
I recognized her name, but I could not pick out a role from her. So since I couldn't pick out a role, I couldn't pick out which role she was playing here either.
yeah, I did. This was only the second thing I'd seen her in, but I did like her a lot in this, and I loved her character, and we'll talk about favorite characters in a sec.
I gotta ask though, I know how big of a
What?
stickler you are on teeth.
You know, I sort of feel like, and I don't know if anyone else can vouch for this, but if you have had bad teeth in your life, that's one thing you zero in on for other people, like because you're so conscious of your own teeth that you just notice it about people and you notice it to the nth degree. So, yeah, I mean, obviously from Sex Education, I was like, who's this girl with the buck teeth, you know? And but I think knowing her character from Sex Education, knowing kind of, I would say, a similar character that she played as Chelsea, just like a lovable, like meaning well, like really sweet. You know, I kind of grew to really find her like adorable and attractive, and I think because I liked her character, I just found her appearance so much more desirable, you know. So I kind of was able to look past her teeth, you know, just it kind of gave her character. And like I always kind of roll my eyes when people say that. Like I remember Jewel the singer, she has like a snaggle tooth and she's like, oh well, it gives me character, I'm not going to fix it with any dental surgery or anything. And I was always like, whatever, like just fix it.
Breaking news, there are ways to make you look past bad teeth.
I guess if you're sweet like Chelsea.
Yeah.
And then last we have Walton Goggins, which the name didn't ring a bell for me. The face didn't really ring a bell for me. But he's the actor who played Rick, and he's been in a bunch of shows that I haven't seen. He's been in The Righteous Gemstones, which is aired right after White Lotus, coincidentally, and then Fallout, which I still haven't seen, and then Justified, which is a show I think my husband watches or wanted to watch, and I have not seen it all.
And the thing with Walter Goggins is I know his face. I haven't watched any of those shows. I know his face from I feel like so many random little things,
Yeah.
but he's one of those actors that see the face, I don't know the name. So without watching this show, without him having a prominent role in this show, I would still never have known the name to the face.
Yeah, I would not have either, but I feel like he did an amazing job in this show. He did a lot of crazy things. So
Yeah. They're on the topic of attractiveness as it pertains to teeth. I guess there
uh-oh.
was an internet rumor about how he was making a receding hairline attractive, and I can't imagine. I can't imagine that. I mean, you would be the better person to ask this, but I can't imagine a woman's perspective would agree with that.
You know what? Some women don't really care. I gotta say, I kind of care. Sorry, I'm shallow. Spoiler alert, I'm shallow. But
Well, I feel like from a guy's perspective, to me, if the hair starts to go and it starts to go that bad, embrace it. Just embrace the
right,
baldness. Get rid of it. Like it
yeah,
doesn't work. That is nothing that a self-respecting man should strive for.
it
So
really
be
doesn't
shallow
assist
too.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it's long and it starts way back here, like it doesn't help you out any. Just buzz it or like bick it.
Yeah. And definitely don't try to pull a faux mullet either.
No, all that to say, you know, I do think as far as his face, he has a very handsome face, so I'll give him that.
Just missing
So
hair.
I can see the appeal. I could see the appeal of like why, you know, a 21-year-old girl on TikTok would be like, "Ooh, Walter Goggins." I can see it for some reason. Ooh, Walter Goggins. So getting into favorite characters or storylines. I mean, we had all these different things going on. We had the rat lifts. We had what I would call the BFF storyline, which was Jacqueline, Kate, and Lori. We had Mook and Guy Talk. I don't know how to say it.
Yep.
So we had that couple that worked together. Then we had Valentin and like his friends. Then we had Porn Shy and Belinda. We had all these different things going on. So what were the couple of storylines that you liked to follow or you enjoyed? You know, every time they would go to that part of the story, you'd be like, you know, inching forward on the edge of your seat, like, yeah, I want to see more of this.
I can't necessarily say I want to see more of Mook and Guy Talk, although I did find Mook absolutely incredibly adorable. So I wouldn't have complained if they did more of their little arc. But I also felt like that was a little bit of a distraction storyline. I feel like Guy Talk was kind of just kept in the story because of his eventual statue of redeemed hero at the end. Other
you know
than
what?
that, yeah.
A lot of people felt that way, and not really about Guy Talk, but about Mook. Like they thought that she had something a little bit more to do with this story. So we'll talk about that when we talk about the final episode. But yeah, I could see online that people were thinking that Mook had a bigger role than she actually ended up having in the end.
Yeah. As far as you were calling them the BFFs, I was calling them the girlfriends. I found their arc to be amusing and comical. I felt that overall, to the overall realm of the thing, it was kind of a bit of a distraction. It was kind of just the comic relief of the show for the audience. And the fact that like they're plastic, they're kind of fake-ish, but all three of them are like that. So it still kind of works. There's still kind of an appeal to watching their friendship and their kind of roller coaster as the season progresses.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, as a woman watching it, it did remind me of my female friendships and things like that. I think any woman would relate to that. It just had the fact that, like, yes, you can love each other so intensely, like your sisters, but also you can be pissed at each other. You can have, you know, very intense feelings against them, or they piss you off, or, you know, just so it's just a complex relationship that goes on between female friends. So I feel like of the three, of course, you know, I love Michelle Monaghan, but I feel like I related the most to Lori, and I was always kind of rooting for Lori just because she seemed the most like me. She was sort of practical, like kind of wondering why everyone else is unreasonable. You know, I don't know, I just saw some, and she wasn't perfect either. Of course, towards the end, she makes her mistakes in retaliation of Jacqueline sleeping with Valentin.
Yeah.
She, you know, sleeps with one of his friends, and that puts her in a pickle. So
Which
that
I don't
whole
know how
situation,
that was. I don't know how that was supposed to get back at Jacqueline.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was, I think it was just like, I'm not speaking to you, so I'm gonna go to this fight and I'm gonna have a good time and like screw you guys. Like, I think that's what it was. And like sleeping with his friend was just like a cherry on top to be like, oh, well, I can have fun without you guys. Ha.
Lori was my favorite of the three as well, and I think it was because of how she kind of broke down a little bit at the end, where there was this sense of failure underlying that she had to deal with, and realized that, you know, like every piece of identity that she tried to achieve throughout her life, it went in kind of an inverse direction of the fulfillment she was seeking. So I kind of found that a little bit of appealing to know that, you know, so your life's not always gonna go perfectly. It's not gonna go according to plan. There are people where luck just finds them and good things happen. But most people, it's not something that is easy or guaranteed.
Yeah, and I think that whole speech that she did at the end, I think a lot of people again were online were predicting that these three friends were just going to have a complete blowout where they just leave the resort and they're not talking to each other and they
Yeah.
probably won't again. I think that's what everyone assumed was going to happen, but it was it was interesting to see how Lori shifted that dynamic with that one thing she said to her friends. And a lot of people are calling it like, okay, Carrie Coon, like she's going to be in the running for an Emmy for that performance.
And I kind of like the fact that they did not blow up because at the end of the day, the part that kind of created strife with Jacqueline sleeping with Valentin, you have to remember as an audience that it's just a fling, it's a hookup. Like they're not like yeah, it was kind of messed up to do, but they're gonna leave the island and go home, and they're never gonna think about those Russian dudes again. So, like, is that something that should really ruin your friendship, even though it was a messed up thing to do?
True. And I don't think it was that. Like I kind of think it was because Jacqueline, A, she's married.
Yeah,
B, it's the fact that she was like, "Oh, Lori, you should ask Valentin if he wants to XYZ." Like she was
yeah,
like throwing Lori like if you're just gonna be so adamant about me hooking up with him, then why would you like like go and hook up with him? If you're trying like why are you saying one thing and doing another? I think that's what it was about.
and in denial of that when Lori threw it back at her face, like she called her out, like you were trying to get me to hook up with Valentin.
Yeah.
What the f?
Yeah. It's just why would you do that? It defies reason. So I think
Yeah.
that's why she was pissed off. So going from a bunch of I wouldn't say catty, but women with conflict, then we transitioned to my favorite storyline, which was Chelsea and my favorite character. And she was just so funny, so sweet. She was, faced with a younger man. Saxon was right in front of her trying to get with her. The whole time she was adamant, Rick is my soulmate, and she's just kind of true to herself too, which I respected. She's all about them being at the resort to it's all about wellness to her. She's saying, "Oh, well, we need to do this work on ourselves and we need to feel good about our lives and where our heads are at." And I mean, I don't know if I can relate deeply to her extreme interest in like astrology. Obviously, I know my sign, but I'm not like, "Oh, well, you're this sign and you're not compatible with my sign and my sign. We do that." Like, she's a lot more, or she was a lot more deep into it than I was. But yeah, I just generally enjoyed seeing her storyline, and it kind of bummed me out a little bit just to see her be so bubbly and so sweet, and Rick is just kind of like hugging a brick wall. You know what I mean?
And I think that because they built her up to be not just this sweet girl, but also having this strong moral backbone, this high spiritual belief, they built her up so high that what happened to her at the end kind of was such a crushing. They kind of needed to build her up for that to have such a crushing effect on the audience.
Exactly. That's what writers do. They
Hmm.
they make us love a character so that they can take them away and break our hearts. That's literally what they do.
Yeah, and just the fact that like even though they her and Rick kind of just felt like it was older guy dating a
Mm,
younger girlfriend he doesn't really care for, but just the fact that she wouldn't let him go, she wouldn't buy into Saxon, uh,
mm,
even even as And there were like moments where Rick seemed a bit more human, and you could kind of see where Chelsea's basis of her opinion was in their relationship. It wasn't like it was some fantasy in her head. Like there were times when Rick's off on freaking Mars, and it looks like he's just shallow and just wants to be with this young chick. But there were times when he was kind of in the right frame of reference, and you could kind of have justification for why Chelsea felt about him the way she did.
Or you could see their connection. Like even though he was being cranky and grumpy, you could see that he did care about her in certain moments. It was just sort of like he was plagued with his own shit, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of it.
Yeah. So we'll discuss that a little bit more when we get to the finale. You had a thought about the rat lifts. What did you think about them?
I actually really enjoyed that entire family's arc because they all had something different going on. They were all such a different personality. I did find Lachlan to be a bit of a creepball. So I didn't necessarily enjoy the Lachlan part, especially given the fact that like everyone in the family has this positive assumption of him, for lack of a better word.
I think it's because he's the baby. He's the youngest one.
Yeah.
I think that's why. But of the rat lifts, I did find Saxon I never thought I would say this, but I found Saxon to be the most redeemable member of the Ratliff family.
Really? Just like the workaholic, cheesy, shallow, just wants to get laid pretty boy?
Yeah, but by the end he was quite changed, and it took, a lot of different situations to do that to him, but he, all of a sudden he was reading books. Like, yes, part of it was to try to get closer to Chelsea, but he, and he turns into this, you just see that he's broken. There's that moment where he's talking with his father and he's like, you need to tell me if there's anything going on, because like I don't have anything else.
This is my life. Yeah.
Right. Which was sad, and that was tough to hear. Like, I think he's supposed to be in his late 20s or so, maybe 26 or 27. So that's hard to hear someone like that, someone that age say that they don't have like anything worth it in their life. And I think when he kept trying to get with Chelsea, she was rejecting him. And then the moment that he saw Rick return and she ran to Rick, and you could see the look on his face like, I wish I had that. You know what I mean? Like, I wish she looked at me like that. I wish I had someone who would look at me like that. You just kind of see a sadness about him, and the way that he comes off is like an a-hole, because he's so broken inside that he wishes things were different, and that's just how he deals with it.
Which is actually, now that you put it that way, it's funny that Chelsea could not see him as this fixable thing, because she said part of her appeal in Rick was that he was a broken man and he needed to be fixed. But Saxon also is a bit broken, and he just puts up this front that he's just, pretty boy looking to get laid, and like nobody can see the shattered boy inside. Because you're right, it is kind of unfathomable that someone can get to their mid to late 20s and not have any hobbies or interests besides work. You weren't always your father's employee.
Right.
Did you play video games or read comic books or go play football when you were a little kid, or like anything? Nothing? Like there was nothing you had an interest in as a child?
No, it's just, I mean, well, I guess the difference with Saxon is he wasn't her soulmate like Rick was. I think when she met Saxon, she was just wrote him off oh, he's a douchebag,
Yeah.
he's not soulmate material. Like, that's why she wasn't willing to even hook up with him when Rick was away, just because it wouldn't have been worth it to her. It just wasn't worth it.
And that's kind of, the fact that that's how she perceived him is kind of Saxon's fault. Like, that's the persona he embraced.
Yeah. So, getting to some more conflict, or what I would call the WTF moments. So, I mean, there was probably from the first episode, I knew that things were a little bit off with the Ratliffs when Saxon made a comment about how Piper, who is his own sister, was hot, even though she was this virgin loser. And at that moment, I kind of was like, what is with this family? And unfortunately, I did not know later how much worse that family could get, or like how much it could go from 0 to 60. So, what were some of the just bonkers moments for you?
That was the start of my kind of icky feelings about Lachlan, because, Saxon makes that comment, but then Lachlan brings it up to Piper later, and then they had another interaction like way later where he wanted to go with her and live in Thailand, live with the monastery, and she's kind of like, ooh, this doesn't feel right. And then, of course, we have, the full moon party where Chelsea and Chloe are, having the threesome, the orgy thing, whatever it was with the brothers, and Lachlan's over here, and they do like kind of the college girl experimenting thing where they make out, and they're like, well, okay, you two make out now, and Saxon's like, whatever, and it's kind of like a peck, and then Lachlan just goes all in, full tongue practically, and then that escalates to the point where Lachlan and Chloe are banging, and Saxon's over here thinking he's getting a handy from Chloe, and he's actually getting it from his little brother. It's just like, oh my God. Like, they're like this little brother that everyone has these fond images of is just like the ickiest creep you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah, and there was also a scene too where, Locke, and this was before the crazy incest thing went down. Locke and Saxon were sharing a room, and that was when they had was it his butt? I think they had a butt scene for Patrick Schwarzenegger, and Locke was just kind of like looking at his brother's butt. Like
what are they trying to say here? Is he obsessed with his family? Is he? I don't get it. Is it a sexuality thing? I don't understand what's happening here with this kid.
Yeah, it was a weird dynamic, and it was between the three of them, and Piper. Yeah, there was this weird thing where, I mean, I guess we found out later what it was, but Piper did not want Locke to be at the monastery too. Yeah. So, I mean, we found out that was something else, but yeah, there was this weird, just a weird tension, or like a weird thing between all the siblings, which,
very, very weird. Very, very weird. I mean, and on top of that, you also have it, the WTF with Tim as far as these justification, fantasies he's having in his head of like, he's got such guilt of these impending legal troubles that the only way he thinks he can save his family is just by ending them all. They're not going to be able to deal with the embarrassment of me possibly going to prison. They're not going to be able to deal with them losing all their wealth and the lifestyle that they're accustomed to. So, the only way he feels he could give them salvation is just to kill them all? What the actual F?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that whole thing was crazy. Apart from the Ratliffs, the parents both just taking handfuls of pills constantly. They were hardly present on that trip. They were mostly in bed sleeping it off, or drinking and sleeping. are
Yeah.
drinking and taking pills.
Yeah, they're talk about you got incestual things with the kids and then substance abuse with the parents.
Got some issues in that Ratliff family.
Yeah.
And then speaking of other issues, so Rick is kind of having a moment when they go to this snake show. And he makes the decision to let the snakes out, and Chelsea gets bitten promptly.
Yeah, and it's like this. He kind of like has this moment of like the hippie fantasy, like, oh, these
Yeah.
snakes should be free. No one wants to be in
Right.
prison, blah, blah, blah. And he's stoned out of his ass. So he just like runs around and he's like, go, be free, be free, be free. They get out, they run amok. And then Chelsea confronts him about it after the fact. And he's like, I'm sorry, I was just stoned beyond belief. It's like, oh yeah, that just makes all this okay, even though she told you at the outset, no, Rick, this is not cool. They're venomous. They'll bite people.
And when he was going around to the cages, I was just like, I could never. Well, first of all, I would never feel bad for snakes to say, oh, they need to be free. But second of all, I would never be able to, undo the latch on one of those cages to physically let them out because you're opening them to coming at you. So,
Yeah.
not
I mean,
desirable.
Yeah, the argument is always like, well, something attacked you unless it's provoked, but why take the chance?
Yeah, and another Rick thing is for a few episodes, we were sort of wondering what Rick's deal is. Chelsea kind of asked him, why are we here? And he just kind of seemed like he didn't want to be there. She's like, let's focus on wellness. Let's book all these treatments and massages. And he was just kind of like, well, he was being evasive and he wasn't telling her why they were there. And so then he tells her, I think it might have been after the snake incident, he tells her that the guy who owns the hotel murdered his father. So she's like, well, what are you going to do about it? And he's saying that he's going to go to Bangkok and take care of it. And she's like, don't do anything stupid. Like, why are you going there? Like, just stay here with me, please. It's a whole thing. But I think she sort of realizes that's why he's so broken, is because his father was murdered when he was young, or so his mother says. And that's really just affected him his whole life.
Yeah, and to me, like, I kind of got the feeling he was on this hell-bent internal mission. So the kind of shocker moment was after he confronts Jim, and Jim doesn't recognize him. So then they kind of have this back and forth where Jim and Svitala come back to the island. And, of course, we know we're a topic ahead, so I don't want to spoil anything, but that final scene, and Jim kind of breaks the news to him of his true identity, and like to me that was the big shocker. And then of course what happened to Chelsea, and like the lead up to me, like I knew something was going on with Rick, and I knew like this is not something that this man is gonna let go. So like they're like the Rick thing was like just a very gradual build up to me, where there was not, the bomb drop to me wasn't felt until the bomb was actually dropped.
Yeah, we had a couple pseudo bomb drops. I would say the first moment was when he says why they're there. Another one would be when Rick and Frank, who Frank is played by Sam Rockwell, which we'll get to his what the F moment in a second. Yeah. But everything kind of goes awry when Rick and Frank go to the owner's house in Bangkok, and Frank is not sober anymore. He's just taking drinks, and Rick kind of chickens out, and he says, I was just looking at this old guy and he just looked so helpless. And so what he decides to do when he's in front of him is he just pushes him over in his chair.
And then he runs out to Frank, and he's like, "All right, we gotta go. It's like, what is you think the old man's like a turtle? He's falling, he can't get up.
And like, not to mention, you go back and you stay at the same hotel that he owns, and you think nothing is going to happen to you. Like, you think your money is good there. Like, what?
See this guy again?
That doesn't make any sense. But yeah, getting back to the Frank moment with Sam Rockwell. So I mean, he could be in the running for an Emmy too for this WTF moment. But when Rick meets up with him, and he hasn't seen him in a while, and he does this whole monologue about wanting to be an Asian girl and like experimenting with his sexuality. Just like, I saw so many memes and screen grabs of Rick's face during that monologue where he was just like,
well,
like he's just speechless.
A lot of it is because like it starts off with he's just a sex fiend. Like he's like, oh, I had this, fetish for Asian women. I just want to be here, and I wanted to bang all of them, And they got to the point where it's like, I realized that I figured out that I wanted to bang them because I wanted to be the Asian girl getting banged by me, and then it like just transitions into the whole experimentation and finding some random dude to bang him so he knows what it was like to be the Asian girl. I'm like, what is happening here?
Yeah, it started off, I think they were talking about sobriety, where Frank was like, yeah, I've been sober for X amount of years. I was in a situation where this was my day to day. It got really bad. And then after that, this happened. And then it spun out of control, that whole speech.
He said he could deal with the sobriety, but he couldn't deal with the celibates. And then that may have like started into the story.
Oh man, that was just that was, I think, the first like WTF moment for me in the show, and I think it was maybe episode 5 or so, where I was just sitting there in disbelief, like, what the hell is going on?
What is happening? And the one thing that actually kind of bothered me in like the whole Bangkok quest thing is the fact that like they go in and as the sobriety thing is falling apart because he's throwing back drinks, Frank and Rick never got their story on the same page. Like he never told Frank that he had seen all of Spitala's movies, and
Yeah.
it's like this whole like Rick's whole quest to find Jim and confront him on his father is just gonna completely fall apart in front of his eyes.
It was just kind of poorly executed, just not planned very well. So Frank was kind of going off book, and he was making the ship go down badly.
Yeah, badly. What did he say when they were watching Madonna's movie at the end? What did he say? It was like Peter Pan meets I forgot what the other one was. It was like Peter Pan meets Showgirls or something. I don't remember what he said exactly.
Oh yeah. He was the character of Frank was quite a character.
Yes.
Speaking of another weird kinky thing, so this, I think, showed Saxon's growth. You know how we were talking about Saxon was sort of redeemable throughout the course of this season. So Chloe pitches for Saxon to sleep with her, but Gary wants to watch.
Well,
so
Gary wants to start watching and then swoop in like the hero and finish the job, so to speak.
Yeah, but basically what happens is she pitches it to Saxon, and even Saxon is like, immediately no. Like,
yeah.
No.
All of a sudden there's a level of creep that even Saxon will not blow through the wall over.
Like, this is way too kinky even for Saxon, who is, you know, a douchebag who just wants to get laid. So I thought that was pretty funny, and that did show a moment of growth. But the fact that Chloe was even asking him was just like, and then, you know, they're looking across the way at Gary, and he's just kind of like, it was so creepy.
And the fact that like juxtapose that to like he's reading these books from Chelsea, and she wants him to like read the ones of spiritual growth, and he's reading the ones of tantric. So it's like, wait a minute, so you run right to the tantric sex portion of all these books, but like this weird sex fantasy with the hot young girlfriend of this old guy, you're just like, oh no, no, no.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't explain it. So another couple WTF moments, when Laurie sleeps with Valentin's friend, and then they're literally lying in bed, and I was kind of laughing because it was so unbelievable, this moment where he has the nerve to ask her for money.
Yeah.
He's like, oh,
Hooker.
could you Venmo me, or like, oh, I really need to get my mom out of this country, or like a visa or something like that. So I just found that so unbelievable. And then on top of that, she's got to sneak out of his house when his girlfriend comes home. Like, it was just a mess.
And he's ripping off all like the transfers. So can you wire it? How about Cash App? How about Zelly? How about PayPal?
Yeah. He's listing all the different ones off. That was just, it was like a forehead moment. You were like, oof, that's terrible.
Yeah, and like it's almost like it wasn't necessarily referenced, but like I don't know if maybe that was like a light bulb going off in Laurie's head that like, okay, maybe I took my anger at Jacqueline a little too far here. Like maybe this wasn't the right course of action to get back at her.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the finale, because we have a lot to unpack there.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of loose ends to tie up in just one episode. It was 90 minutes. Overall, were you satisfied with the ending? How did you feel about it in general? And were you surprised by what happened and everything that went down, or was it kind of exactly what you thought was going to happen?
If I don't know necessarily, I wasn't necessarily expecting a certain outcome, but the way it played out, if I look at, okay, where we were before the finale started, or at least before all the juicy stuff started to happen, and then where we are at the end of the show, I'm like, I'm very, very satisfied with this. Like it sucks for Jim and Vidala, but
Yeah.
but on the same hand, we weren't going to see them again anyway, because we don't see the hotel curators in the following season regardless. So,
Yeah.
I mean, and we've spent a lot of time talking up Rick, talking up Chelsea, but Rick also, through it, whether his own insecurities, anxiety, disbelief, misplaced loyalty in his mother's words, whatever the case may be, regardless of that, he's still screwed up big time. And the fact that like he's on this quest to find his father, winds up shooting the man that he thinks killed his father, only to find out that that man is his father. For what happened to Rick after to get gunned down by Gaitak, it kind of felt like, all right, Rick kind of got what was coming to him in that moment, because like that was pretty bad.
Well, wasn't it foreshadowing when Chelsea said something before that? Well, she did say something about, I have a feeling we're going to be together forever, but she also said that, your fate has already been determined or something. I thought she said something like that. What's going to happen to you is going to happen anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as far as them being together forever, I'm sure that's not exactly inaccurate.
Yeah, with what happened. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing with Rick is tragic. And like, I saw some people making the joke that they had a picture of, remember at the end, the Indian therapist or practitioner that Rick was seeing, who was actually helping him. And he really wanted to meet with her. And she's like, no, I got to meet with Zion. I have a session. Just wait an hour. And so people put, a picture of her online, and they're like, the biggest villain of White Lotus season 3 or something like that. Because think about it, the fact that she didn't have 5 minutes to talk to him, like he wasn't able to control what he was going through internally. And that's why he lashed out and went to shoot his father.
It kind of spits in the face to that whole uh expression of if you see something, say something.
Right.
Like if you know something's wrong in a school, at work, like do something before disaster strikes. And it's like Dr. Amrita in that, it's like she couldn't even, she's like, oh no, 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 I have to be on schedule. I have to fulfill my appointment. She couldn't even use her psychological training to realize like, okay, I'm meeting with Zion, but this is a generally happy kid. He's probably not a priority over this guy that's melting down in front of my face.
Right, just to look at him in his eyes, and you could tell he wasn't okay. So you would think a professional would zero in on that, but apparently not. So yeah, kind of sad that, it had to end that way because it probably maybe could have been avoided.
Yeah, it absolutely could have, and you're right. Just for a therapist, a professional in that vertical, having the wherewithal to realize like this something's wrong with this guy.
Yeah, and speaking of, guy talk shooting Rick. So a lot of people were predicting that Mook actually had something to do with the robbery. So that didn't end up being true. That was a lot of people's prediction. But
Talk about
Mook did
tinfoil hat.
but Mook did end up being the reason that Guy Talk had the balls to shoot Rick because she was sort of pressuring him to further his career and to do more with his life. So I think he was thinking of her because there was that moment, the scene before, a little bit before, where they were talking and she was kind of standoffish. He was like, "Oh, you want to get together tomorrow?" And she's like, "Oh, yeah, we'll see." So he was really just trying to please her, and that's what kind of gave him the balls in that moment. And Spitala was yelling like, "Shoot him!"
And she also kind of gave him a little it's that's almost kind of like saying like, oh, you're gonna be a little pansy boy, I don't want to see you again. But she also kind of gave him some confidence back when he was really thinking of leaving the resort, and she was kind of
Yeah.
like, well, that may not be a smart idea. This is your job, it's your career, put some more thought into it. So she kind of like backed him off the cliff, so to speak, as far as giving his resignation to, the Leapak or whatever their little chief of police was. She kind of like got him, like put him back in a frame of reference to even make that final moment with, shooting Rick a reality to begin with.
Right. And then we see Guy Talk driving Svitala away after that. So clearly he's become like, I don't know about security, but he's become like at least her driver at minimum.
Yeah.
So he's got set up with this cushy job now because of what he did to help her in that moment, even though she had to, yell at him at the top of her lungs to do it.
Yeah, hopefully he's not just friend zoned.
Yeah.
Speaking
Speaking of friend zoned, so I don't know, the more I've been thinking about it and the more I've been just marinating on it, I feel like Belinda kind of sold her soul by taking the money, and she really left Porn Chai in the dust, and that was sad to me. And you could tell that he really liked her, and he was like devastated when she said that she was going to be leaving the next day. So I don't know. The way that I think about it is, she did not expect to get 5 million. That was just, and then the fact that Gary transferred it to her account and was like, "Oh, Tanya would have wanted you to have it," and all this stuff. Kind of think that's bullshit. I saw some people say, and I have to agree, that I don't think him giving her the 5 million necessarily means anything. I don't think that necessarily means that like she's good to go, she's safe for the rest of her life. I sort of think that he could go after her at any point, and it does seem like she is when she was talking to Porn Chai, she was like, yeah, circumstances have changed. So it kind of sounds like she's gonna like live in the money, and like, I don't really know that she's going to start her own thing. She's probably just going to enjoy her money and not really have to work.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but to your point about having some like there not being closure on their particular arc in the story, I I don't necessarily think that he might still come after her, but I feel like because he gave her so much more money than he was originally going to, there it opens up the possibility for their characters to return in another season and be like, "Listen, I gave you so much more money than I was originally planning on it. You owe me again." So it's almost like there's like they could return as like this kind of favor thing, and he's kind of like a little puppet master, and you kind of using her in future
Yeah.
seasons.
Like, I don't think him giving her the money means that they're all squared away. And some people also pointed out too that what Belinda did to Porn Chai, like saying, you know, had plans to start this business together, they were all about it, and then she turns around and is like, sorry, circumstances have changed, so we're not doing that anymore. So they were saying that what she did to him was exactly what Tanya did to her. They had the plans to start the business, and then it's like, oh, never mind. Sorry, that's not happening anymore.
It was a little crude on her part, but at the same time, like she had that plan to start the business before she knew he even existed. So it's like poor Chai's tie to it was just that he wanted her to think about doing it there because there's less red tape, less hurdles to jump through as opposed to going back home and dealing with, you know, American bureaucratic bullshit, for lack of a better word, and opening a business. So
And I think it was his dream too to like, he really felt like they had a connection. So he was like, oh, cool, like I can be with this wonderful woman and we can start this business together. Like, we're both in that arena and we can live this amazing life with this business that we've built. And I really think he was genuinely in it, and she just kind of like ripped his heart out.
Well, I think he was also genuinely into her. I mean, I don't think was just a lustful encounter. Like I think they really had a connection, and maybe that was just due to the nature of their business, of what they do for a living. You know, there is, you know, there can be somewhat of a, you know, beyond like a beyond a fascia type of relationship with you know, massages because they're trying to release negative energy and such.
Speaking of negative energy, so getting to the Ratliff family in that last episode, so a whole lot happened. And obviously, you know, I wrote down in my notes in the beginning of the first episode, when they mentioned the poisonous seed of the ping pong tree, I was like, okay, there's something to that. There's got to be something to that. A lot of people were predicting that Tim was going to try to utilize it to kill his whole family. And they ended up being right. He did try. He sort of had a change of heart halfway through with him slapping the glass out of Saxon's hand and saying, oh, it's the coconut milk. You guys can't drink that. And so what ends up happening is Locke comes along and is like, oh, I'm going to make one of those great protein shakes that my bro talks about all the time. And so he goes to use the blender, doesn't rinse it out, which I'm wondering if it's because it's because he's just a dirty boy. B, it's just that he knows that there's some alcohol in it and he's like 18 or something. So he's like, oh, sweet. So that's why he doesn't wash it. But whatever the reason, he doesn't wash it. He makes a smoothie. He ends up almost dying. He like throws up a few times and is passed out basically and sees God. And it's a whole thing. And Tim revives him, but we didn't know what his fate was for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes or so. So I thought for sure that he was just the third casualty in this episode.
Yeah, I mean, I think they did the entire Rick, Jim, Chelsea thing in the span of Lachlan waking up. I thought he was gone for sure. I thought it was gone. I thought it may have even gone to the point of Tim taking his own life because, like, here he is thinking he realizes mistakes. He's good. He's clean. He reversed what he was going to do to his family very terminally, and like here, it's still he wound up still losing his youngest son. So I kind of thought like it was almost going to go another level on top of that. Here's Lachlan dying, and Tim's going to off himself or something. Uh, but that was almost kind of like also the final nail in the coffin as far as Tim realizing that he needs to face the music, and they're on the boat leaving, and he's like, things
Yeah.
are going to be different when we get home, but we're going to face it as a family. So there's a kind of a recoming together of the family where for much of the season they were a very fractured group.
Oh yeah. And then even just Victoria Ratliff, she seems like she's a dipshit. She seems like she's a flake. But what's crazy is she ended up being more perceptive than anyone. And I had to laugh because, she's hugging Piper and she's giving the thumbs up to Tim behind her back, which I thought was hilarious. But I mean, she ended up being more perceptive about her daughter's feelings, about knowing that Piper's heart wasn't completely in it, staying at the monastery, and that she didn't think that she could do it. And, Victoria was kind of seeming annoying about it, like, oh, you don't want to stay there. But, really, I think it was just like a mother's intuition. She could tell, like, my baby's not happy, like she knew, and we all kind of thought that she was crazy and that she was good for nothing, but she actually ended up being a more knowledgeable character in the end.
I almost felt like the Piper realization was a little unbelievable to me, only because we didn't see it. Like she just kind of went away. We didn't like see her, sleeping in the dirt or not having modern amenities. All of a sudden we're expected to believe like the little spoiled princess all of a sudden, changes every belief she has in her body as a young woman that she can't do this anymore. So I almost like I'm not even I can't even necessarily say it's I see it as much as a foreshadow effect of her mother knowing her daughter better than she did versus like some kind of regret. Maybe it was like Lachlan's icky desire to also live there with her, and she kind of like this doesn't feel right, and I'm just gonna tell my parents what I think they want to hear. So like I didn't necessarily buy the whole Piper thing as far as Piper really just missed her cell phone and lights and running water.
Yeah, we should have seen a little bit more of it. The only whisper of it that I saw was when she was, staying overnight, when she went to her room, like they were showing her eating with Locke, and he's slurping up the soup or whatever it was, and she's like disgusted looking at him, and then she goes to her room, and I remember she's lying there and she's kind of looking around the room, and I think there were like close-ups of like just the window or just kind of the shabbiness of the room, and like those were to me the only indications that she's kind of looking around like, oh, this place is it's not ideal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what you think a monastery was going to be? The monks are dressed in dirty robes.
Yeah, the girlfriends, which yeah, I mean, I guess so their storyline kind of, ended with a happy ending with Laurie's speech. They all kind of end her speech with, "Oh, I love you so much. Oh, I love you." They're all going around the table, and then when we see them, they're running when they hear the bullets. They're running for their lives, but then we see them on the boat and they're all like huddled close together, like all about each other. So yeah, I mean, their storyline ended pretty nicely pretty early on in the finale.
Yeah, I mean, now that you say that, I mean, it could have very much been a moment of perspective for them. Like, we just watched a man get shot in cold blood when we were just giving an autograph. So, like, I could definitely see them like, oh, our petty girl drama is nothing compared to, what could have happened. We all could have died too.
Right.
So like I could see that as believable as far as let's forget this and remember we're friends. But I also kind of think that before that, in Lori's little reflective thing, I still kind of think she let Jacqueline off the hook a little bit. Because, like, you don't have to, like, hold a grudge against her. She's one of your best friends for God knows how many years. But, you should also still kind of be, like, remind her, like, that was pretty selfish that you did. And you are married, even if it's a kind of soulless, selfless marriage that is just your boy toy thing.
Yeah, I think she did let her off easy, but I think her attitude was just kind of like, well, let's, let bygones be bygones. Let's just move on with this. And, I think she was internalizing a lot of the things that she was feeling and just sort of realized that in the grand scheme of things, it just wasn't helpful for their friendship.
Yeah, and you know what? Most of the time, stuff like that really isn't helpful for any friendship.
No. And we hope you enjoy listening to our friendship. So if you enjoy listening to this show, we would appreciate it if you gave us a 5-star review and let us know what you think of each episode. If you have any questions or comments, you can email us at redrealreviews. That's the letter N and real spelled with 2 E's at gmail.com. Also, make sure to follow along with us on Instagram and TikTok as long as it lasts. I am Binge the Ginge with dots between the words for Instagram, not for TikTok. He is Nutmeg2 Palmetto, the number 2. As always, you can find video episodes on YouTube and Rumble and stream us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Next up, we're going back in time to a Yellowstone prequel with the second and final season of 1923 on Paramount. And we didn't cover the first season, so you won't be finding that in one of our old episodes, but we can't turn down a chance to dissect another Taylor Sheridan show. So there's some hot takes in that one, so enjoy. Until the next Real Review, Red and Red signing out.
In less than an hour, aircraft from here will join others from around the world.
Don't act so surprised, Your Highness.
Hey guys, you ready to let the dogs out?
What? Do what?
No. Try not. Do. Or do not.
Because I don't want no scrubs.
Let the dogs out, like, who let the dogs out? Who?
Who brought this guy along?
I can go slow ahead. Come on down and chump some of this shit.
One more thing. Do me a favor. Don't go chasing waterfalls.
Mankind, that word should have new meaning for all of us today.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
I'll take care, all right? None but love for you. None but love for you.
Have any clue what's about to happen to him?
Oh, not a chance in hell. Good night.
Fire, you son of a...
You did it. You crazy son of a bitch, you did.
Toodaloo, motherfucker.
Hey, it's not funny anymore.
TLC references. Still, nothing. I swear to you.
But as the day when the world declared in one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. We're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today, we celebrate our Independence Day.